Hare Krishna. With the permission of His Holiness Bakthi Prama Maharaj, has been insisting that I should be taking class, though I feel that is actually not correct. But Maharaj is very insistent I should be hearing Maharaj. So I'll speak something on today's verse, and then I would request Maharaj to please share his realizations also. We're very happy to have Maharaj for the last few days. So many devotees are so inspired by his preaching, by his demeanor, by his etiquette, and our congregation is so benefited with so much of his sangha. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, 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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, जय श्री श्री राधा माधव की जय, श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई की श्रील प्रभुपाद की श्रील गुरुदेव की अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की यथाय गौर प्रेम। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नस्तप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So we read today from Canto 3, Chapter 10, and the verse is 10. So it's 3-10-10. Vidura uvacha yatatta bahurupasya hare adbhutta karmanaha alakyam lakshanam brahman yatha varnayana prabho। विदुरा उवाचा यथार्थ बहुरूपस्य हरे अद्भुत कर्मणः आलाक्यं लक्षणं ब्रह्मन् यथा वर्णयन प्रभो। विदुरा उवाचा यथार्थ बहुरूपस्य हरेरद्भुत कर्मणः आलाक्यं लक्षणं ब्रह्मन् यथा वर्णयन प्रभो। Oh, you can see. You can take this. Prabhus. Uvacha. Vidura said, Yatha, as, Atta, you have said, Bahurupasya, having variety of forms, Harehe, of the Lord, Adbhuta, wonderful, Karmanaha, of the actor, Kala, time, Akyam, of the same, Lakshanam, symptoms, Brahman, O learned Brahmana, Yatha, as it is, Varnaya, please describe, Naha, unto us, Prabhu, O Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bakthi Swami Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat. Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. Purport. The complete universe is a manifestation of varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself. And all is under the control of the Supreme Lord in His form of Kala, or eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There is a time for atomic dissolution and a time for the universal dissolution. There is a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being, and there is a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depend on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilation. Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Samitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadavayam Tadavati Savatanantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Sarvaraghunatam Nitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Harijan Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sarva Shri Vishakamitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopishna Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Krishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripaha Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this shloka, we are just starting now the questions that will be put forward by Vidura to Maitreya. And you all know in the background that Vidura came out of the difficult episode of trying so hard to advise Dhritarashtra. So many times Vidura tried to advise Dhritarashtra to stop the politics in the Mahabharata. But Dhritarashtra was very influenced by his son Duryodhana, by Sakuni, and by his own greed. Dhritarashtra did not realize that time was running. He was getting older, but still his desire to conquer, his desire to hold on to property, that was not going. So today now in this shloka, Vidura is very peaceful, because though he tried very hard to help his brother did not want to hear him. And so Bhagavatam tells us that he left the palace and he moved around, and he went for yatras, and he went for tirthas, and he went to seek out sadhu. And that is the main reason why we go for yatras and we go for tirthas, because we want to hear from sadhus actually. So Vidura somehow, he managed to see Maitreya, but before that he saw Uddhava, and he wanted to surrender to Uddhava to hear about Srimad Bhagavatam. But Uddhava was very careful, because he followed so much of Vaishnava etiquette, something I think Maharaj has been speaking this whole week. And so there is one very important aspect of Vaishnava etiquette. It's known as Maryada Pratikrama. It means that we should not actually be in a position to instruct others who are actually senior to us. And so in that mood, Uddhava, though he was such an exalted devotee, Bhagavatam tells us that he declined to actually teach Vidura, because Vidura was considered like an uncle to him, older to him. So then he told him that you are lucky, because Maitreya is nearby, and therefore Maitreya is elderly, and he's also very advanced. You sit with him and you hear from him Bhagavatam. And so, because Vidura himself was a pure devotee of the Lord, and because he's none other than Yamaraj, he accepted the mood of Uddhava, and he went to sit with Maitreya. And so, in the beginning of this chapter, very nicely we see how Brahma had finished his prayers in the 3rd canto, 9th chapter. And after he finished his prayers, Krishna gave him full cognizance and full potency to start creation of the material universe. So those first 9 verses in this chapter are dedicated to how Brahma began to create in this material world. And that also shows us that without the influence and blessings of Krishna, even a great personality like Brahma cannot have the potency to create. So that potency is coming from Krishna. And so now Maitreya and Vidura are seated, and Vidura is starting to ask from Maitreya. And this is the first shloka. And it is so important that he is asking a very important question. He doesn't ask about Krishna immediately. He doesn't ask about the pastimes of the Lord. But the first thing he's actually asking is actually to please describe the nature of eternal time. So this is a very important point for us. How important this topic of time is. If Vidura, who sat down to hear Bhagavatam from Maitreya, the first question he asks is actually to ask about the nature of time. And he says, he gives us the clue about the nature of time in this shloka. He says that nature of time is that it is another form of the Supreme Lord. And he describes the Supreme Lord as Adbhuta Karmanaha. That means one who is very wonderful and one who is an actor. An actor on stage, if he acts very well, the audience is very mesmerized. But audience may sometimes forget that the actor on stage is actually playing a role. And sometimes after the actor comes off the stage, we may not be able to recognize him. So in the material world also, Krishna takes the form of time. And sometimes we cannot recognize time as Krishna. And therefore, the whole, this shloka, the shloka after this, and many more of these shlokas, they will speak very nicely about the nature of time. And Prabhupada writes in the purport very nicely that this entire universe is actually under the control of time. And so that's why you will find here, Prabhupada says that Krishna comes as eternal time. And time's nature is to control. That's why in Bhagavatam when you read, time never comes on its own. Very often you'll find that the word controlling comes in front of time. If you check Veda base very carefully, controlling time is always the way Prabhupada explains time. Because the nature of time is actually to control. But the beauty of time is that it controls, Prabhupada writes in the purport, in different dimensions. That means, at different levels, at different points, time is influencing us. Time is controlling us. But time is setting different times for each of us. So we all have our own timings, isn't it? Everyone wakes up according to their nature. We do things according to our nature. We have certain time of the day to do something. In the same way, the whole universe also has a certain time. You will notice the beauty of the universe is that the universe obeys Krishna more than we obey Krishna actually. The living entities, we have problems obeying Krishna. That's why we are in the material world. But if you look at the orbit of the planets, for example, the planets never move a single inch or centimeter away from their orbit. They're always moving according to orbit. They move according to the time. Jupiter has his own time, Mercury has his own time. The planets all have their own time to move, and they never deviate. They always follow the same time. So this is why actually it is so important to understand time is acting now. We may all be sitting in the same space here. We may all be sitting down between 7:30 and 8:30 Singapore time. But that time element is acting on us differently. According to our focus, according to our sadhana, according to our devotional service, how we utilize time is very different from each other. So there are some points in few minutes we can share from Bhagavatam about the nature of time. And this nature of time is so powerful, and it will be spoken about very nicely in Bhagavatam in so many places by so many devotees actually. One quality of time, or one nature of eternal time that we should understand from Bhagavatam is that time actually causes the fear of death. This is an important point. All the living entities, they are very, very united in one thing, that everyone fears death actually. In the third canto, in the 26th chapter, in the 16th verse, there is a nice purport where Prabhupada speaks about how time causes fear. And Prabhupada speaks there so nicely to say that the nature of time actually is that it is destructive. Prabhupada writes in that purport that the fear of death is the action of kala or time factor. This is very important. That means the nature of time is that it acts upon us in such a way that every living entity, whether we realize it or not, we are always fearful of death. But Prabhupada says in the purport that for a devotee, that mood is different. Because a devotee, if he's sincere, if he engages in the spiritual activities of devotional service, like what you're all doing now, then what happens is, he's completely freed from the platform of birth and death. And even though time is acting on the devotee, because time is running, because the devotee is using time well, that fear of death is not so strong in the devotees as it is in the materialist. The materialist fears death because he realizes that death will take everything away. That's why Prabhupada writes in the purport, the nature of time is that it is destructive. Whatever that is created must be subject to destruction or dissolution. And before it is destroyed, something else will happen to it. It will deteriorate. 2 Ds. Before something is destroyed, it must deteriorate actually. So when we were young, we all had hair, we had teeth, and all these things we had. But as we are growing older, teeth is becoming loose, hair is already gone, and all those things that we had before, it is no longer there. We are looking at children and they're running around and they're playing very nicely. But we remember that we were young also one time. And we forget that now that time is running actually. So Prabhupada says in that purport that actually the Lord speaks to every conditioned soul as time. That's a very important point. Krishna speaks to us, Prabhupada says in the purport, as time. So every time we look at the watch, we must understand that Krishna is speaking to us. He's telling us time is running. What are you doing about it? This is an important point. And Prabhupada ends the purport by saying that Prabhupada says that Krishna says in 14:26 of Bhagavad Gita that if a sincere soul surrenders to him, then there is no longer any problem of birth and death. And why is that related to time? Because without the platform of time, there is no birth and there is no death. This we must remember. Everything in this material world is manifested on the platform of time. Birth, death, old age, disease. They are all there because time is existing. So Prabhupada says we should accept the time factor as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the third canto, little bit later, Kapila Dev says very nicely to his mother Devaki. I think it is in 3:29-37 of Srimad Bhagavatam. There, he says to her nicely, Rupa Vedaspadam Divyam Kala iti abhidhiyate Bhutana Mahad Adina Yato Binna Drisham Bhayam. The translation is very nice. The time factor which causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, it is only another factor or another feature of Krishna. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead is afraid of time factor. So when we are afraid that time is running, we should remember this shloka. Because this shloka tells us that if we do not know that actually time is Krishna, that same time is same Krishna, then we will fear time. So whenever we are anxious, time is running, I haven't had time to do this, do that, it is actually Krishna speaking to us in the form of time. It is a wake-up call that time is running actually. What are we doing about it? The materialist, Prabhupada says, is always afraid of time. But a devotee knows that time is another representation of Krishna. So the devotee never fears the influence of time. Let time come. If we are using time wisely for Krishna, then why do we have to fear time? So this is an important element actually. When a child is small, you understand that the child grows up to be a man. But the child doesn't realize that time has run. Isn't it true for all of us also? Every year that goes by, we don't realize that we're actually getting old. Everybody externally will see he's so old. But in our heart, we always feel we are very young. Have you seen people who are actually very old, but they dress like they are, 15 years old, 16 years old? You laugh, isn't it? Why is the old man trying to look young? But in the old man's heart, Prabhupada writes, Prabhupada speaks also, the old man still thinks he's very young. Because he does not understand that time is actually running. So there is cause for fear for those who do not know how time acts. Once we understand that time is acting on our body, time is acting on our health, time is acting on our valuable time for Krishna, then the devotee is actually understanding that time is Krishna. So this is very important. That is the first nature of time. That time causes fear of death. So the devotee does not fear death because the devotee accepts that death will come. And that is the feature of time. The second feature of time, Bhagavatam tells us, is that the nature of time is to change everything in this material world. So if we become attached to something in the material world and we think it will not change, then it will bring us disappointment. Isn't it true? Supposing I buy a new phone and I become very attached to the phone. Suddenly the phone, is not working very well. We become very anxious. Nowadays we are so dependent on handphone that the moment the phone is lost, right, we don't know what to do. Everything is in the phone. We become very fearful because we have lost something. But we don't realize it is surprising in this world if you don't lose something. It is surprising. The nature of the world is that you will lose everything. We cannot win in this world. I remember my Guru Maharaj saying that everybody who's born into this world, immediately when we are born, we become bankrupt actually. Because nothing we actually own. And everything that we hold will quickly leave us. When our children are young, we think they will be with us always. By the time they reach a certain age, they don't even want to look at us. We think that we are always situated in good situation because we have some money. But we don't realize that the nature of money also is to run away from us. Money also runs. And we don't realize that money cannot stay with us. Today is very auspicious day, isn't it? It's the day of Ashraya, and we don't realize that if we don't take something that we have, if we don't take something that is given to us by Krishna, and if we don't give it back to Krishna, then that is going to go away from us. So before it leaves us, we should quickly take it and we should use it for Krishna. That is why the nature of time is that everything in this world will change. Nothing will not change. In fact, the only constant thing, Prabhupada says, is actually change. If we don't have change in this world, then nothing actually is constant except change. But it's very difficult for us to accept change. But if we accept time as being coming from Krishna, then the cousin of time is change. The nature of time is to change. Then we must accept that our condition today will not be the condition tomorrow. We must accept it. Sometimes as devotees, we think that if I've taken up Krishna consciousness, everything will go well for me. But you know, in Bhagavatam, nothing went well for any devotee. Right? Every devotee had difficulty. Parikshit Maharaj was cursed. And all the time that he had spent taking care of the kingdom just went away. He was cursed. So we have to accept that time has capacity to change everything in material world. Third factor of eternal time is time has capacity not only to change anything, but to destroy everything. Everything eventually becomes destroyed. This is powerfully stated by Kapila Dev, also in the 3rd canto. But before that, even Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Kalosmin loka shaya krit pravitro. He says that time I am destroyer of the worlds. He tells Arjuna in 11:32 of Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna, I am time and I am destroying the whole world. And I have come here to destroy all people. Then Krishna says, with the exception of you, the Pandavas, all the soldiers on both sides, they will all die. So it is very clear that Krishna has the capacity to kill everyone. He doesn't kill everyone because he has to. He kills everyone because it is the nature of time. The nature of time is that it must end. It must end. And that's why Prabhupada writes in the purport, death cannot be checked. Everyone who was there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they will all die. But in 11:33 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mayai vaite nihata purva eva nimitta matra bhavya savya sachi. Krishna tells us how to handle this feature of time. That everything is going to be destroyed by Krishna. But it is very important for us to realize that it is Krishna's hand. Arjuna thought that he was supposed to fight and kill the warriors. But Krishna in 11:33 and 11:32 tells him that I am time. And by my arrangement, everything is going to die. Whoever who's going to survive in this war of Mahabharata, they will survive by my mercy. But everyone else who's going to die, you become an instrument in my hands. And I will come as time to take away their lives. So this is Krishna speaking in Bhagavad Gita itself. So Prabhupada writes in the last part of the purport of 11:32, he says time is destruction. And all manifestations which we see before us, they will eventually be vanquished by the desire of Krishna. It is the desire of Krishna. That is the law of nature, and we must accept it. Krishna says in the 3rd canto, 29th chapter, I think it's in the last shloka, 45th shloka. There, Krishna says very nicely, and I like this verse because of the words that Prabhupada used. He says, Sa anantaha, sa anantakaraha kalaha, anadir adir krit avyaya, janam janena janayan, marayan mrityu antakam. The verse is there. You just look at the translation that Srila Prabhupada gives. Eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. That's the beauty of time. Time always gives every one of us a beginning and end. But time itself has no beginning and no end, because time is Krishna. Then he says, time is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maker of this criminal world. So Prabhupada translates the translation. He says this world is criminal by nature. So actually, if you meet someone who is not behaving like criminal, it is surprising in this world. So devotees also, don't become disappointed when you come to Gauranga Center and you find, that sometimes, there is some friction. Sometimes devotees are there, but they speak like criminals. Sometimes we don't speak nicely, we don't do things nicely. Some devotees become hurt, they say, why it is like that? But we should accept that the nature of the world is that our tendency is criminal in nature. Because we all moved away from Krishna. That's why we are in this world actually. So Krishna says, Kapila Dev says, the nature of time is that it ends this phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation, it brings one individual into existence and it ends another individual. Prabhupada says in the purport, the son is begotten by the father, but the father will be killed by Yamaraj. And then Prabhupada writes in the purport, Yamaraj himself will have to end his time in this world when this entire material creation, it is also annihilated. You see? Even the Devatas, they are considered to be immortal, Prabhupada writes in the purport. But actually, they have a lifespan. It's just that their expiry date is very late. Our expiry date very early, their expiry date very late. But it will happen. Eventually they must expire also. It will have to happen. And so therefore, Prabhupada says, he translates this translation, this material world dissolves even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. If even Yamaraj is dissolved in this material world, then what are we expecting? What are we expecting? That's why in Mahabharata, very nicely Yudhishthira Maharaj gives this very important point. What is the most wonderful thing in this world? The most wonderful thing in this world is that every day someone is dying, but those who live, they think they can live forever. We go for someone's funeral and someone is dead in the coffin. We look at them, we say, oh, poor thing, he died. And we think everybody else also somewhere they will die. But as we walk out, it never strikes us that our turn will be coming also. But in our mind we'll say, everybody else will die first, and then I will die later. We'll say, it's okay, leave it now, don't think about it. But no, Prabhupada writes in the purport of this shloka, that this world is moving by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Finger signal, is it there? It's there. The phenomenal world is created, maintained and destroyed by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Can you imagine? Krishna just does this one movement and time will destroy everything. You and I do this one movement, nothing happens. Nothing. You try doing this, ask someone to do it, nothing will come. But when Krishna does this, everything ends. This is the nature of this world. So Prabhupada says that everything is destroyed in this world. But we may start thinking, if everything is destroyed, then why do devotional service? Devotional service also will become destroyed. What to do? Prabhupada writes in the last line of the purport, therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. What does he desire then? A devotee desires only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now Prabhupada writes something amazing. He says, this servitude, this mood to serve Krishna, it will exist eternally. The Lord will exist eternally. His servitor will exist eternally. And the service will exist eternally. So 4 things Prabhupada guarantees us will never be touched by time. Our service will never be destroyed by time. This is good news. Whatever service that you do for Krishna, it is never forgotten and it is never destroyed. Please remember, anything that Krishna does not forget is never destroyed. If you do a service for Krishna, Krishna will never forget that. He becomes bound by your service. And whatever that is not forgotten by Krishna is never destroyed. So all of you have come today to Gauranga Center. And that service, Krishna will never forget. Jagannath records attendance every day. He knows who is coming and who is not coming. And even if you are not here, if you are at home or you are working hard, 12, 18 hours, you are all working Monday to Friday. But if you are remembering Jagannath, Jagannath is remembering you. That service of remembrance of Jagannath never goes in vain. That is service. You are cooking so nicely for Krishna. That service will exist eternally. As long as Krishna is here, that service is here. And the third thing, so Lord exists, service exists, the servitor will exist eternally. So you may ask, we may ask, how is it possible? We are going to die. The body will die. But our eternal nature, that never dies. We will always be servants of the servants. If we accept that, time protects that mentality. If we don't accept that we are servants, time destroys us. Those who accept that they are servants of the Vaishnavas and the servants of Krishna, and they act on it, the servitor will exist eternally. So our service never goes in vain. Our ability to perform service will never go in vain. You see in Bhagavatam, so many devotees were put in so much difficulty, but was their service stopped? No. Their service continued. Gajendra was in so much pain, he was held by the jaws of the crocodile. But he had the service mood of holding up a lotus in his trunk when the Lord came on Garuda. If I was Garuda, if I was Gajendra, I would say, why you are taking so long to come? I will complain when I see Krishna. But he did not complain. He accepted that this is time. The time factor is acting on me. And therefore for 1000 years he tolerated time. And he chanted shlokas remembering Krishna. And on that platform of time, because he performed his service became eternal. The Lord is eternal. And he became eternal because the Lord gave him this beautiful liberation from cycle of birth and death. And the last thing is that our service will never be in vain. Please always remember that. Be encouraged in devotional service. Whatever that you do for Krishna will never go in vain. I want to end by remembering today is very auspicious day. It is the day when Sudama came to see Krishna. But more deeper than that, Sudama gave Krishna a very, very small thing that he could not even afford. 4 handfuls of chip rice. Not even from his own house. They had to get from the neighbors. In own house they had nothing also. But 4 handfuls, 4 palms, not even hand, sorry. In Krishna book, it is actually palm, not hand. Hand means extra. This is only palm. So 4 palmfuls. He just took that and he gave Krishna. Whatever he gave was nothing in comparison to what Krishna had. But what he gave pleased Krishna so much that Krishna gave him opulence beyond what he could handle. It was more than what he had actually. This is the nature of Krishna when you give your life to him. Time doesn't destroy your service. Time embraces your service. But time destroys everything else. Srila Prabhupada's sharir had to go. His Holiness Bakthi Prama Maharaj's sharir had to go. But his service, Prabhupada's service, your service, by the strength of Bhagavatam, it will never go. Your relationship with Krishna, on the strength of Bhagavatam, it will never go. Your relationship with your spiritual master, on the strength of Bhagavatam and time, it will never go. So Sudama gave so little, but he got so much. Today is the day Draupadi Mata was going to be disrobed. Today is the day. But because she had no one, but she turned only to Krishna. And on the same day, many years before, when Krishna came to visit the Pandavas, Draupadi Mata gave him a very small piece of cloth as some token of appreciation. Our Shastras tell us, when her cloth was going to leave her, Krishna remembered that she had given him a small piece of cloth many years ago. And because of that small piece of cloth, he preserved that large piece of cloth, so much so that the Kauravas gave up. Today is the day that Draupadi Mata was saved second time by Krishna. And she was saved just by the episode of Akshay Patra. She had nothing to give Durvasa Muni and gang who came. And they were sent by Duryodhana. She had nothing. And when Krishna came, he asked her, I'm very hungry, do you have something? And Draupadi Mata said, I have to feed so many people. And Krishna, you're asking me for something and I have nothing. Krishna said, you always have something, give me your plate. And he saw one morsel of food there, one rice. And And just like only 4 palmfuls Sudama gave, Krishna accepted 1 grain of Draupadi Mata. And from that Akshay Patra, there was so much of food. And that food that Krishna took, that 1 grain, satisfied him so much that Durvasa Muni and the whole gang, before they could come out of the water, they felt, my God, it is like I've eaten 2-3 days amount of prasad. Now I can't eat so much. Better I just go back. And they went back. You know, nobody goes back when prasadam is there, isn't it? But they were so full because she satisfied Krishna. So your service, no matter how small, 1 grain, whether it is 4 palmfuls, it doesn't matter to Krishna. It is that you have given it. You have given it. You have used your time for Krishna. And whenever you use time for Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate. And that is the nature of eternal time. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Srila Gurudev ki Jai, Jai Gaura Premananda. Maharaj. You have. Prabhu, can we turn this?
I would request Maharaj to please speak something on time.
And we have time.
I was wondering, speaking about 1 hour time, how it's possible. Very difficult subject matter. But he explained so nice points. So today, yes, time passing by 2 days is Akshaya Titya. We'll do something, will not pass. And you so nicely mentioned that if we do something for Krishna service, that will be eternal. Also, Prabhupada nicely mentioned, if we think time is Krishna, then why should we fear? If Krishna comes in front of us, wow, God has come. So, those who are able to see Krishna's time, they will be fearful. But they will be able to see Krishna as time, they will be very happy. And for the non-devotees, sun by rising and setting there, taking out the lamp. But for the devotees who are serving, like one example, when in our planet, our time is passing. But if you go too near the sun, the time will not pass. Because we are connected with this earth, that is why time is passing. But if you connected with the sun, the time will not pass. The time is calculated with this sun. In the same way, if you connect with Krishna, and our life will be eternal. In the spiritual world, there is not past and future. In this material world, only two things, past and future. There is no P. Present there, when you say present P, the P already becomes past. But in the spiritual world, always present. Brahma Samhita says, what is the verse? 56. Shriya Kanta Kanto Parama Purusha Kalpatarava Dharmashtanto Amavitam. Then Kathaganam Nattam Gamanam Vikam Spirishati. What is after? Chidanjyoti Samashati Samashati Najatta Khirabdi Najatra Najatta Shaman Shamay Kal Najatta Kal time never pass. What is this line? Kalastata Manashati. 56.
little bit down.
That line is that their time will not pass. Time is always eternal. But here, as you are fearful about time, so that is why we should go one place where time will not pass. That is the spiritual world. Here everybody is lamenting. Lamenting means thinking about past. And all is fearful. Fearful about future. So everybody is lamenting for past and everybody is dreaming about future and lamenting for the past. That is in a natural material world. Those who are lamenting, those who are dreaming, fearful, they are in material world. But devotees are always busy in service, in present time. Hare Krishna. So we are fortunate. So in the difficult subject matter like time, His Grace Devaki who has given so much, so many information from Srimad Bhagavatam and other. Really time factor is very difficult to understand. In this material world, time from starting from sun passes through the atom from here up to Brahma's life. So resolution material world also, because everything conditioned in material world when in time frame. But it is in spiritual world, it's not like that. But at the same time, it is not so easy to understand. That is why this subject matter is called achinta, beyond our perception. As because in this material world we cannot see anything eternal. As because in this material world we cannot see anything has no beginning, no end. So that is we cannot imagine how it is possible. As in this material world, everything has limit. That is, we cannot think about what is unlimited. So in the same way, about Supreme Personal Godhead is very difficult to understand. It is the subject matter of beyond imagination. So we should try to understand by humble attitude and with surrender to Lord, Guru, Vaishnavas, so that by their mercy we can, He can reveal unto us, we can realize. It is not that by our intelligence we will understand everything. Nobody in this world can calculate this and make you understand. He can explain. But it is up to us, our degree of surrender, then by the mercy of Guru, Vaishnava, Krishna will reveal in the heart. Because if we want to understand a difficult thing, we need some example in front. But no example is in this world, we can see this eternity. So this subject matter is, Jiv Goswami said, to understand, use a spectacle. That I will not understand everything. They will understand something. But if you say, yes, I want to understand, then it is not possible to understand. If we take up the mentality that this subject matter is beyond my understanding, it will be revealed by the mercy of Guru, Vaishnava, Krishna, then it will be. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada.
His Holiness Bakthi Prama Maharaj ki. Maharaj, on behalf of the devotees, we want to really thank you for coming to Singapore. Jai Jagannath Baladev Sudatamai ki. And we want to request you to please continue coming. Singapore is a very important stop, and many of us are very inspired by you coming through Singapore, spending time with the devotees. Not just Bangladeshi, Bengali devotees, but all other devotees in the community. So we hope to hear from you, Maharaj, and we hope that you spend
I
more
come
time.
here for getting inspiration.
We are also inspired by you. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Oh, Radhapat will give this thing to
Is it? Okay,
Oh,
Jai.
Pani
Pani. And he's president there, so it's very important. Are there any questions for Maharaj? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for the amazing class, Prabhu. It's my fortune to be here. Prabhu, you mentioned about Maryada, Vyatikram and Vaishnava etiquette. Specifically the episode of Uddhava passing on Vidura to Maitreya. But seniority is not just a function of age. I understand, Prabhu, that Maitreya Muni was a contemporary of Vyasadeva, and Vidura was the next generation, and Uddhava was the next generation after that. I understand that part. But Uddhava is so elevated. He was personally selected by Krishna to speak Uddhava Gita at the end of his pastimes. Very, very important. In fact, just a couple of months before Bakthi Prama Maharaj disappeared from our association, I heard him speak in one of the Indian temples between, I think, where he spoke about Uddhava Gita, and he said, even compared to Krishna speaking to Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, since Arjuna's questions seem to stem from ignorance, the Uddhava Gita is deeper because it's spoken to Uddhava, who is a pure devotee. So such an elevated personality, and Maitreya didn't get to hear Uddhava Gita directly. He had to stand to the side and hear Uddhava Gita. So isn't Uddhava more senior than Maitreya?
I would request Maharaj. No, please. See, Maharaj, the deal is I had to speak, but realizations, it has to come from you. So my request first is you speak something.
As is order. Uddhava would have speak, but as Maitreya was sitting here, so as he is here, so I like Devaki Prabhu can give this answer. But as I need as Shanyashi dress, there is a request to me.
Prabhu, from what Maharaj is saying, I understand, and what is stated by Prabhupada, because Prabhupada gives a purport on Maryada Pratikrama. He says that even if someone is very elevated, and even though he's more qualified, but he will set the example for everyone else, for the rest of the world. It's a very important example to set because one who is very elevated, no doubt, seniority of age will not be it's a material consideration. But Uddhava also wanted to show us that there is a way of behaving which is very important in Vaishnava culture. And that behavior is actually the example set by devotees. And Uddhava wanted to show us that actually, while he may be very elevated, we are moving around in this material world as devotees. And there may come a time when, we think that we are elevated but we are young, but still we should be given opportunities to take up very important positions of preaching and service. But that mood in the presence of our seniors, even in terms of ashram, in terms of age, right? It becomes very important for us not to transgress that etiquette. That is a very important thing. It is a counterbalance in our society. Otherwise, not everyone will be like Uddhava, who was extremely pure in his devotional service. And you will have people who will take the example of Uddhava. See, Uddhava spoke and gave Bhagavatam class to Vidura. So I'm young, but why can I sit and I can take class and I can instruct you also? I'm following the example of Bhagavatam. That is not the example to be set for the masses, you see. So it's an important thing we should remember. When Parikshit Maharaj asked so many questions to Shukadeva Goswami, it is not that he did not understand. He is a pure devotee himself. But the pure devotees ask questions which may not be, which they fully know, but they ask it also for the benefit of others. So Uddhava's behavior, Prabhupada writes in that purport, is very instructive to us on how we should behave in Vaishnava etiquette. Yes, Prabhu.
Just a follow-up, Prabhu. You mentioned Sukadeva Goswami. When Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj, Vyasadev, Narada Muni were present in the assembly.
Yes. But in Shukadeva Goswami's case, the reason why he sat down and spoke about it is because it was actually Krishna's arrangement that he needed to speak Bhagavatam. And all the devotees who were there, they all accepted his qualification without any question. And therefore, when he sat down and spoke Bhagavatam, it was a very acceptable proposition for them. But different parts of Bhagavatam teach us different things. And therefore, Uddhava wanted to teach us this very important. It may seem minor, but it's very important for us to understand. And he did that to show the exalted nature of a devotee. Because a devotee is not after fame, name, but he is more interested in following the rules of Vaishnava Sadachara, which is actually given by Krishna and the Acharyas. So according to time, place and circumstances, someone may be asked to do something. For example, Vishwarupa in the episode of Vritasur, he was also asked by the Devatas that you should actually come and become our spiritual master. But then he declined because he said actually that I am not as elevated as others, and not even you. You are all much more older to me also. But there, the Devatas, they come back and they say that actually you are more elevated in terms of transcendental science. And Prabhupada writes there that the qualification of a devotee is not so much his seniority, but the qualification should be his depth of realization. So at that point, Prabhupada is putting forward another important proposition, that in a practical level, we should not see someone younger than us, and we should not think that just because I am in Krishna consciousness 20 years, I cannot learn from someone, that he's junior to me, or he's not advanced, and therefore I should just dismiss him. That is also not correct. So balancing both is a very important part of Vaishnava etiquette. I hope it's useful to you. Maharaj?
No, he is right, but his another point was, I want to, you were saying that Moitra was sitting nearby, his realization was less. It is not like that. When Krishna told to Arjuna Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna has not accepted a disciple to give Bhagavad Gita. When Shukadeva Goswami told to Parikshit Maharaj has accepted a disciple, but Shukadeva Goswami is continuing. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was whole his life teaching to Sharadamada Ramananda, they wrote book. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote book. Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta has so many disciples, Brahmachari Sannyasis. There are 27 Sannyasis, but Prabhupada was a Grihastha. How many times he got his association? But Prabhupada wrote book and flooded his teachings. It is not that in close association, who is accepting these teachings?
I think that's a very important point. Very important point. That we should be very careful not to think that if someone is just seated, that they will not be able to receive the message. And actually it's true, because Sutta Goswami is the one who's speaking and narrating this wonderful pastime in Naimisharanya. So how perfect must his realization be, isn't it, Maharaj? For him to be able to absorb it. So I think we should remember that very importantly. How much do we accept and how much we are receiving, as opposed to how close we are sitting with someone. Mosquito is sitting on the lap of a king. But he's very close, but it doesn't mean that he's absorbing a lot of blood. That's why he's biting the king. But king but he's not deriving anything. He's not receiving the right message. So better to be able to receive it than to be a mosquito. Thank you, Parvat Prabhu. Very nice questions. Maybe we have you.
I have another question.
Actually, Prabhu, please. We'll ask because we have a few. Yes, please.
Prabhu, my question is about the nature of this world, the time and time factor. We told it deteriorates and it destroys. And as a human, as a natural tendency that we are very hopeful of the future And even though the times are uncertain or there may be problems or something, we always try to find stability within the material world. And there is a constant struggle for stability. So maybe you can give some advice on whether it's a fruitless struggle or how should we?
I don't think it's a fruitless struggle, but you answered the question actually by using the word, it's a constant struggle. Accepting that our attempts to be stable in our life is actually a struggle is an important part of realization of a devotee. The materialist cannot accept that stability is a struggle because he is constantly frustrated by materialistic tendencies. But the devotee does not think that way. The devotee accepts that whatever attempts for stability in this material world is a constant struggle because of the nature of time, Prabhu. The nature of time is such that anything that you want to keep on a stable platform, it cannot last very long. The devotee accepts that. So he or she tries to maintain a stable environment for Krishna consciousness to the best that they can. And a stable environment for material upkeep, if you're grasta or in any ashram, just to maintain something as best as they can. But at the back of our minds, we always know that at the end of the day, it is really not up to us that something can be maintained. Source of income is not the source of maintenance. Srila Prabhupada says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Income we are earning, but ultimately, how stable we are, how we are being maintained, is actually up to Krishna. So when we accept that, Prabhu, then we are not discouraged in our attempts to take care of our life. We do what we can, but we know at the same time the nature of time. And we utilize our time well so that we create some stability in our life so that we can perform nice spiritual and devotional service. To that extent, if Krishna sees that we are trying to do something, I think it is all our experience that Krishna will reciprocate. And if time is not with us, then the things will deteriorate. Bali Maharaj stopped the demons in the 8th canto from fighting Vamandev because he told them that our time is not, now time doesn't favor us. Time is not favoring us. So our time has passed. In the same way, the Devatas were told by Krishna in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam that you have to make truce with Bali Maharaj, the demons, because you have to churn the milk ocean. And Krishna tells them that time is not favoring you at the moment. Therefore, you have to declare truce with the Devatas. So a devotee accepts that sometimes time is favoring him, and we continue our devotional service. But we also accept that sometimes time is not in our favor, no matter what we do. And that is also Krishna's hand. Parikshit Maharaj accepted that his time was coming to an end. And so he told the sages that Krishna has so kindly come in the form of a Brahmana's curse, and he has overtaken me, Atyakraman Avinyataha. He has overtaken me imperceptibly as time. And therefore he did that because, Parikshit Maharaj is saying, he did that, Krishna did that, because he knows that if I were to continue staying here, I will be so attached to my family, my kingdom, that I will never renounce all this for Krishna. So when a devotee is faced with calamities or difficulties or challenges, as you said, his stability is actually his devotional service. And that devotional service gives him the ability to understand and see the hand of Krishna. It is the mercy of Krishna. So does that help, Prabhu? Maharaj, some points? Parman Prabhu, we'll come back to you now for the final thing we have to do.
So I'll keep it simple, Prabhu.
Sure.
So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the festival of all of Krishna's qualities, he is Bhakta Vatsala. And you discussed today that Krishna is time. So time is Bhakta Vatsala. A equals B, B equals C, C equals A. So time is kind to devotees. Is that fair to say?
Time is time. Whether the devotee sees it as being kind or not, a devotee sees everything as Krishna's mercy. If time is cruel in this material world, as we read in the purport, a devotee doesn't see time as cruel. A devotee accepts this is the nature of time. Ayu harati vaipumsam. Just as the setting of the sun and the rising of the sun decreases our life, it decreases everybody's life except the devotee who's using time for Krishna. So when a devotee uses time for Krishna, then Krishna is kind to him. Krishna will reciprocate with him. But as I just explained just now to Navagaura Prabhu, sometimes time is also not on our side. And that is the time when we should be patient and continue executing devotional service. Srila Prabhupada tried so many times to introduce Krishna consciousness. If you remember the League of Devotees, he put so much effort into it. But in the end, nothing worked out there. But because Srila Prabhupada could see the hand of Krishna, he could see that time was not favorable to him at that time. But Prabhupada was not discouraged by it. Prabhupada continued Krishna consciousness, and at the appropriate time, right, it just flourished. It just flourished. So I think we can learn so much from Srila Prabhupada that a devotee is not discouraged by the challenges of time. And in that way, right, the devotee sees the kindness of Krishna. Time is like a whip. It keeps us in shape. It also keeps us always afloat. And we never become complacent, because we know that the nature of time is to constantly change. So we should be ready for changes. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice. Thank you, Maharaj. Any last words, Maharaj, from you?
He is doubtful about as time Lord is Bhakta Vatsal or not. If I am in jail and Lord come and say, okay, I am time, I am taking you from here. He is not Bhakta Vatsal.
Yes, Maharaj, please. Parvatu? Jai Gurudhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. His Holiness Bakthi Prama Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Gaura Premanande. Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj will have a program in the evening in the center. So devotees, please take the opportunity to come and hear from Maharaj again. And how many of us want to have Maharaj back in Singapore? Loud Haribol. We look forward again to see Maharaj in Singapore. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much. And devotees, I think prasadam is ready. That's very nice. So please, I think Mataji's and children will request you to go down first. After 5 minutes. Okay, in 5 minutes prasadam ready. You can start some kirtan and then we can